Hirokazu Koreeda. So, thank you so much for being here. How does it feel to be in Philadelphia?
なんか組合と洪水の警報が出てたので、そんな中、このように集まっていただいて本当にありがとうございます。
I saw the alerts for the thunder, so I'm glad that you all decided to show up to the theater.
Before we open up questions to the audience, I would love to ask a little bit about the origin of this film, because with a lot of your films, I feel like it's very grounded, very timeless. It's in a place that is familiar. But this film immediately establishes itself of being maybe of a world we don't know. Did you approach the world building in the film differently?
Yeah, でもいつもとそんなに作り方は変わってなくて、生成 AI で蘇った子供が出てくる近未来の話ではあるんですけども、あくまでホームドラマの中で死者が死んだ子供が蘇ってもう一度親子関係をやり直すっていう、そこにお話の中心を持っていってホームドラマとしてシエと作ろうっていう、そういうスタンスだったので、そこまで大きく変化をしたわけではないです。
I wouldn't say that I treated the world building any differently from my past films. Like, of course, it is set in the near future in a world where generative AI is used to create these humanoid robots, but it's also a home drama where a deceased child is brought back into a family so that they can do over the relationship with parent and child. So, being that it is a family drama, home drama, I wouldn't say much has changed.
Now, was it always going to be that the film starts just a couple years after, say, the grieving period has maybe started to wane? Or was the film always in this place? Or did you have a version of it that you were digging into the grief, the immediate reaction to the death of the child?
すぐ亡くなってすぐというのを考えたかった。その最後にもう一度お別れをするっていう設定は考えていたから、一旦その子供を失った悲しみがもちろん消えはしないんだけれども、そこの方に進んでいって、しかも世間はその事故のことを忘れかけているっていう、それは大体何年ぐらいだろうかと思った時に、2年か3年かそれでそういう設定しました。
No, I'd never thought to do a version of this where it was soon after the death of the child. I always knew that the story would end with the parents having to say goodbye to their child once again. So I wanted it to be in a period where, although sadness around death never subsides, that perhaps it sank to the bottom, and that I thought about how long it would take for the society and world around them to forget about the accident, and that's where I thought maybe 2 or 3 years into, yeah.
And then, speaking about the family and the familial elements, I noticed there's a lot of, whether overt use of like connections and circuitry and roots and family connections. I was wondering if you could speak upon the focus on the foliage, the plants, the robotic makeup of Karaku, of the house and all the different hallways and the lines in it. Was this all meant to come together in some way?
そうですね。異質なものを組み合わせるっていうのが、面白いなといつも思っているので、い 細部もそうですしテーマもそうなんですけど、キャスティングもそうなんですけど、今回のでいうと建築モデルにした、建築家の先生がいて、主人公の先生なんですけど、人ガラスっていうものを組み合わせていくのがその一番難しくて面白いっていう言葉を本の中に見つけた時に、自分が映画でやりたいと思っているそのことによって起きる化学変化みたいなものを期待してキャスティングもしますし、場所も探しますし、その辺がポイントだなと思いながら今回はやりました。
Well, it's true that I like to combine different things into a film that is true of the details of the film, the themes, and also the casting. For this film, there is an architect that became the model for the film's themes, but also the main character. And this architect wrote in a book that combining glass and wood is the most difficult thing, and it's also the most interesting. And that made me think about how, for myself in my filmmaking, I'm always looking after this combination of things that will create a kind of chemical reaction or a spark. So that's what I tried to do in the casting and also in the locations.
And one of the most surprising things that, to me while watching this film, was the traces of a horror element or a terror. Just the way you framed Erica coming from off screen to meet grandma, to visiting Ken at night, all these different elements. Would you ever be interested in pursuing maybe more of a horror film?
I would say that I'm not interested, but I also think that there are many other directors that are much better suited to making horror films than me. I will say that that one of those moments that you had described where Kensuke discovers his wife and the humanoid robot sleeping, I think that is a moment of horror for Kensuke. It's that moment where he sees his wife as if she's changed. She's not the familiar person that he knows, and so that feeling is one of discomfort. And I think I'm interested in making films about those discomforts that emerge in the everyday.
And I have to talk about the title of the film, or at least the English title. Can you talk about the reference to, I believe it's from The Little Prince, and how that not only informed the title and that central scene with the mother and the robot, but what that means for the rest of the film? Is there kind of something to look into with The Little Prince's story?
Yeah, in the story of the Little Prince, and I apologize as the interpreter, I don't remember the actual line in Little Prince in English, but I particularly like the sentiment that what is special to us are things that we can't see with our eyes, that these are things that you have to feel in other ways or be able to see in other ways. And I think that the point of that is to say that imagination is an innately human thing. And I think that currently, at least, imagination and our capability to imagine is what separates humans from generative AI. So I knew that that would be a central theme in the film, and I wanted audiences to be guided by that in order to ask themselves the question, what is being human, and what makes humans different from other things?
Yeah, and referencing Little Prince also reminded me of the beginning of Blade Runner, when they're asking the robot, you know, to imagine a circumstance that is almost not conceivable. Now, when it came to working with the child, the actor, did you have to prepare him differently when it comes to how to act as a robot? Or were they aware in the moment?
そんなにマリン君にロボットを演じてくれっていうような演出の仕方をしてはいないことで、ちょっとまばたき我慢してねとか、3秒だけ息が出るとか、そのぐらいです。むしろ彼らだからちょっと人間ではないものに見えるっていうか、大人の側を演出することで、母親だったり父親だったりが自分が亡くなり子供にちょっと違和感を感じる瞬間として描くことがあって、演出を加えたのは大人側で、基本的には子供はオーディションでいつも通り自分が強く撮りたいなということを申しました。
No, it wasn't as if I told Imu, who is the person, the boy that plays the robot. It's not as if I told Imu to act as if he were a robot. The only maybe direction that's close to that vein would be, I'd say, don't blink for a little bit, or hold your breath for 3 seconds. That really was it. If anything, as a viewer, our ability to see him as not human really lies on the reactions of the adults around him. It's up to the adults to kind of start to detect and react towards the fact that maybe something is a little off. So if anything, I was careful in how I directed the adult actors. For the boy, we did a very normal audition process, and I just tried to find the young boy that would be strongest for the role.
Did you always know that you would have the children creating their sense of Eden, rebuilding a new world at the end? And does that mean that you believe that AI is the future of we have to destroy everything to rebuild? Well, we utilize AI to destroy everything and then kind of rebuild from nothing. I'm trying to think of it. This is more just a leading question, but can you talk about the ending of the film when it comes to the AI group coming together to start anew? And how does that reflect upon the real world?
今作られている映画の中で描かれる生成 AI というのは、人間の社会を支配していって人間がまた現場になっていくものは目にすることが多いと思うんですけども、たまにそれが自分にとってリアリティを持っていないかって考えるとそうでもなくて、この春にニュースで見たんですけども、その生成 AI 同士が人間を介さずにコミュニケーションを始めているっていうことが分かったんですけど、そうなるとね、人間が挟まったら面倒くさい それがだから AI にとってはユートピアかもしれない。で人間にとってそれが何なのかっていうのを考えようっていうのが今回のそこになんとなくそのファミリードラマとしての要素もあるので、子供が親離れをして家を出ていく、それが後に残されるっていうなんかそういう感情と少しリンクさせながら着地点を考えてみようなと思いました。
I think that in general, movies, at least as of late, that depict generative AI are ones that depict a dystopia where AI takes over, dominates human beings, and humans are reduced to basically being slaves to the AI. But when I think of, or when I see those types of depictions, I don't really feel like it's rooted in reality. This spring, I read something about how there was an instance where AI just started to talk to one another without being mediated by humans. And so they're just communicating, with skipping the middleman. And my reaction to that was, that would happen, because I bet it's kind of a chore to have to mediate your conversation through a human. And I did feel like maybe it is something that will happen where AI will start to build their own communities. So from the perspective of the AI, especially in this film, perhaps they are building together a kind of utopia. But for me, I'm presenting that as an idea because I want us to think about what that means for humans. And of course, since this is also a family drama, I'm overlapping that with the idea of the child leaving the nest and then the parents being left on their own.
Before we open it up to the audience, I have to ask if there is a film or a world you would want yourself to live in.
I've never thought about that. So, do you have?
Mine's gonna be a little easy because I'm a new fan of this world. Obviously, I'm a Star Trek convert, so it's a little easy for that one. But I love it.
As a child, I really loved Planet of the Apes. Every time an ape riding a horse would come onto the screen, I would get really excited. So to this day, when a Planet of the Apes movie comes out, I go to the theater and watch it. So I would love to live in that world, but not as a human, but as an ape.
Any questions? All right, let's go right back there. Yeah.
When I first heard about this movie, I was really expecting something either darker or heavier in the drama, and I was surprised to find that it was rather whimsical. It still hit all of the emotional beats, but I found it very light and fun. So I'm curious as to how you landed on that tone.
So just to rephrase the question for those who might not be able to hear over here. When you first heard about this film, it seemed to have inevitably a darker tone, but to your surprise, it's a little bit of whimsical, it's a little bit complex, a little bit lighter at times. Can you talk about how you nailed that tone?
ディストピアではないものとして描こうっていう、亡くなった子供が蘇ってもう一度親子関係をやり直すという話なので、あまりネガティブにスタートはしないつもりでした。ただ受け入れたことによって夫婦の間で感じている、感情のズレだったり、その子供に接する中で浮かび上がってくる後悔だったり、そういうものが見えてくることがある種のディストピアじゃないですけど、その、暗い部分が逆に家の中にもう一回浮上してくるっていうですね、見ないふりをしていたもの、そういう陰影みたいなものは大事にしようと思いました。
So certainly I had made the decision to not create an overly dystopic tone to the film. However, it is a film about a deceased child coming back to the family and a family trying to do over that kind of life that they had with their child. I knew that because that theme is quite heavy that I didn't want to start out the film on an overly negative tone. It's more about how once the family accepts the humanoid strange shifts in their feelings and also an emergence of a lot of the regret that they had been feeling about their relationship to their son, which isn't also particularly, maybe not dystopian, but certainly dark in the fact that it's a darkness that reemerges within the home that they had tried to hide away. So for me, that building that contrast was important.
And side note, I just found out that you edit a majority of your films as well, and I had no idea. So that also sculpts the story and establishes that tone. I don't know if you guys know. All right, next question, right there.
I always really love how a lot of your films revolve around families. But specifically, I always feel like you get a lot of children in your film. And I was wondering, is there something special about the complexity that you find in your film?
The question is, you notice that there is often a focus on children in a number of Koreeda's films, and is there a specific interest or reason behind that, or is it the complexity of childhood that interests you?
自体はとても面白いというのを感じてます。その撮影をしながら子供が面白いなって感じて、とても演じることに積極的になっているっていうのをということなので、それはとても大事にしたいことではありますし、作品の中に子供を置くことで、子供は全部の作品そうじゃないですけど、子供の目を借りて、大人の世界だったり、大人の社会だったり、そういうものを批評していく上として、子供の存在を変えるっていうことは意識しているということではあります。
So I do think that filming children is really interesting to me because as they start to learn the joys of acting, they become really earnest about taking part in filmmaking, and that gives me a lot of joy. So I think that that's one very important element. But I also think that by including children in films, and I wouldn't say this across the board for all of my films, but it allows me to borrow the child's perspective in order to look at and critique adult worlds and societies.
So, River.
Architecture is a very critical role in both the story and also the setting of this film. How was it collaborating with the kind of spaces or atmosphere that you live in and also explore, help kind of establish that setting?
So the architecture is clearly a very established part of this movie. Can you talk about the collaboration, the effort that went into finding the space, designing the space, and those that you worked with to have these characters occupy the space?
そう、家の空間、フリードラマの時には家の空間がとても大事で、そこに家族がどういう形で住んでいるのか、どこで何を食べるのか、誰で食べるのかから物語を書いていくことが多い。 シーンは意識的に外してるんですけども、設定上、建築家の自邸、建築家がいつもはクライアントのために建ててるんだけれども、唯一自分のために建てる家っていうことで、建築家の自邸というのを探しました。で、それはスタッフが探してくれたんですけども、何件か見に行った中で家がとても魅力的だった。一つは中庭が良かった。もう一つはその仕事場と、プライベート空間をつなぐ渡り廊下っていうのが非常に特徴的だったので、あの空間に足を踏み入れた時に、ここの中庭でこういうやり取りができるんだ、あの渡り廊下で電車の音が聞けるんだっていうようなイメージがすごく膨らんで脚本がかけたんですよ。それで、あの家っていう物語を書きました。
For family dramas, the home is an incredibly important space. It's where the family lives, it's where we see them eat, with whom they eat with, and it's very pivotal to the story. Obviously in this film, I've intentionally left out a lot of family meal scenes. However, I was really interested in the homes that architects build for themselves. So if an architect is typically always building homes for their clients, this is the house that they build for themselves to their liking. I had, my production staff look into and build a list for me of homes of architects, and I went to go look at a few, and the house that you see in this film is the one that I was immediately drawn to. One thing that drew me in was the courtyard in the center, and then also I found it really interesting that the workspace and the private home part of the house were connected by this bridge-like hallway. It immediately allowed me to imagine things like conversations that might happen in the workspace, or that a boy might sit in the hallway and listen to the sounds of the trains. It's really the house that allowed me to finish and flesh out the script.
All right, we got time for one more. We're gonna go all the way in the back. Is that a hand? No, or is that a phone? I can't tell. All right, we're gonna go up here. Let's go. This is tough. It's all, everyone's sitting in the front. We'll go right over there.
Japanese society is fragmented to the point where people actually hire stand-ins for their kids or their grandkids because the family either isn't around or isn't interested. How much of that kind of focus on the family was in your thought when making this film?
So Japanese society at this time is fragmented. Where was it? Where the child does not focus on?
No, there may be a grandparent and they're ignored, which is completely different than the way it used to be. So they have to hire someone to act as their kid or their grandkid.
Okay. So the grandparents in Japan society are being ignored at this time, but often there is an opportunity to hire. I'm aware of like the family hiring elements, but
And the question is about whether that's reflected in this film.
yeah. If like the rent, like a family member is reflected in the film. I feel like there's that family romance film.
But あれはフィクションだと思うんですけど、家族が団体化しているというのはその通りです。家族化が進んだのが、成人したぐらい30年前で、3世代同居みたいなものが特に僕が暮らしている東京などではもうほとんど例外になっているから、で親子関係も希薄になっているので、このお母さんと娘の関係が、要するに子育てを頼る相手が、近くにいない。なおかつそれを手助けしてくれる血縁じゃない人たちのサポート体制みたいなのがすごく希薄なので、母親が孤立化するっていうのが都市生活というと一番 問題になっていると思う。私3人に1人は今もう生涯独身という状況が日本では男性は50歳過ぎて独身が今3割を超えたっていう状況なので、そもそも家族でいわゆる一般的な意味での家族っていうものを持たない人たちもすごく増えて、多分その人たちは別の形の共同体みたいなものを求めているかもしれない。それはもしかすると相手は人間じゃないかもしれない。そういう可能性ももちろんなくはないけれども、非常に今家族、特に女性、母親と子供の孤立化というのがとても、問題になっていると感じています。
So, as far as the thing that you were mentioning about these narratives about renting families, I think that that's more of a fiction. But I do think that the fragmenting of the Japanese family is certainly something that's happening in society. In particular, this has to do with how families become smaller nuclear components versus having an extended family that lives together. This started happening maybe when I was in my 20s, so 30 or so, over 30 years ago. And at least in urban centers like Tokyo, it's become very uncommon for 3 generations of a family to live together, whereas it used to be very much a common thing. And I think who that's affected the most is mothers of children. That there is less support in child rearing in general. With the people closest to you, and then there's also very little support for child care through people that are not related to you by blood. So I think that there is one of the greatest problems in the urban centers is this kind of isolation and alienation of mothers and children. There's also the phenomena that now I think 1 in every 3 people ends up being single for their whole life. I believe right now, among men over the age of 50, 30% of them are single and don't have families. So I think that people are trying to, what we thought of as a typical family is becoming less common. And I think that people are trying to find ways to replace that family structure through other kinds of relationships and groups. Perhaps even relationships with those that are not human. So I'm not saying that it's not possible, but certainly I'm looking at and thinking about the very grave issue of the isolation of particularly women and children.
Well, I want to say first thank you to Monica